I want to start out and preface that I've been in IT for 34 and a half years and counting, way too freaking long. And it's been an interesting run, and it's not over, of course, at least I hope not. God willing, I'm watching for a piece of trussing to fall on me now. Pre-PC, pre-Mac, it was back in the Unix days, AIX days, HPUX. So I've been playing around with computers, unfortunately, just way too long. Got into it by accident. I'm an electrical engineer by degree, with 2 master's degrees, and I don't know why in the hell I even have them, because I'm not using them. But hey, if nothing else, you guys can get a good laugh at it and say, you idiot. So it's all good. Anywho, I want to try to really talk today about a couple of main things. You know, there's this big fear from the analog guys of going to the digital world, and even the guys who are living now in the digital world, have the fear of IT. So you have this paradox, if you will, of, IT really is, and all these protocols that you guys are using for I/O and everything. I mean, they're I/O. It's IT at its core, and it has been IT at its core long before any of you guys were using it for audio. So, or for me, for that matter as well. And I started tinkering with this stuff and was running like Nuendo version 1.1. So, I mean, that's again, I'm dating myself, but it's one of those things, and I'm going to touch on a couple of subjects today that some are going to be semi-inflammatory, and that's okay. I'd like to piss you off in the afternoons, and at least it'll keep you awake. But and if I don't, that's okay. Now, the whole idea is we want to make this a very two-way interactive discussion and talk. So if you have questions as we're going along, just like yell, jump up, scream, throw something at me. Just don't hit me with it. And then, that's cool. I'd rather have that than not. And I should probably have you guys come up closer here. What do you guys, come on up. No, you don't want to come up? So all right, so I stink that bad. All right, whatever. So we're going to talk just very briefly about interface options. We're going to talk about audio over Ethernet, being that it's core IT. Yeah, there we go. All right. We have 2 takers, folks. You guys just won 2 bags. We have bags back at the booth, so come on back. See that? Now you all wish you did that, right? For a sinking bag. So I already talked about a little bit about the IT and influencing the direction of audio, and then we're going to take a look at latency in general. So it does skip around. I mean, let's face it, we're really talking about all the same things. So if you hear me jump from one subject to the other, just bear with me. I'm just a dumb IT guy. I don't know what the heck do I know. So anyways, generic audio interface types. USB, so we have USB 2, we have USB 3, and we have USB-C or 3.1. We have Firewire, which is pretty much a dead duck at this point. We have Thunderbolt, and really 2 and 3, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And then we have AOE, audio over Ethernet. So your Dante, your AVBs, CobraNet, and a million other variations that most of them didn't succeed. But anywho, they exist. So let's start briefly with USB 2. Been around for a long time, and it just kind of works. I mean, you plug it in, and you have some latency, and it gets a little ugly, but it does work, and it's functional. For the bedroom recording guy, it works. It's cheap. It's a good way to go. So the key out of this slide that I want to show you, and I don't want to play death by PowerPoint here, guys, because literally, I mean, then we'll both be asleep, and then you won't hear anything. So, the major thing to understand about the slide is the 480 meg per second. Everybody says, oh, megabytes per second. It is not megabytes per second. It is megabits per second. Okay? So this is going to apply to all the technologies that we're going to talk about. The industry loves to baffle you guys, and they want you to think that it's 8 times faster than it really is. It is not. It is 8 times slower than it really is. So, so let's look at it and say that's really 6 to 60 megabytes. a byte being 8 bits. So, you know, we'll do the IT calculation junk later. And I'll give you guys a quiz then. You'll have maybe 3 seconds to complete it. I'm sorry. So anyways, skipping on USB 3. It's funny, it's been out since 2010, yet the first interface just hit last DAM. So a year and a half ago. And we had the pleasure, we work with Personas pretty closely, and we're going to be working closer with them on their quantum interfaces, which I'll be talking about in a couple of minutes. But it's just shocking that it took that long for a USB 3.0 device to come out. The day it came out at NAMM, it was Winter NAMM last year, and we were there, and I turned on the machine, and this big red light came on that box. What the, you know, and I had a couple of choice words to go with that I can't say now. So I went flying over to the Personas guys, and I'm like, help, what's with this box? Well, apparently I got the one box that missed its firmware flash. So they flashed the firmware, we took it back, fired it up, and it ran for 4 days straight, never shut down. Good. We were impressed with the latency. It really dropped. And again, we'll get more into why here in a little bit. But now look at the speeds of this thing. 5 gigabits, bits per second, or really 625 megabytes, versus USB 2's what, 60? Big difference. Big difference already. All right, clicker, come on. USB-C came out in 2013, and we haven't seen an interface yet, and God knows if we will. I'm sure we will. Question is when. But I'm definitely looking forward to 1.25 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. Ought to be real interesting. So I'm going to skip ahead another one. We're going to talk about FireWire for all of about 5 seconds. It's dead, guys. If you're still using it, it's time to start thinking about getting rid of it. You know, I mean, Jobs is the one that said it was dead in '08. I mean, it is, you know, 9 years later. He's dead. He said it was dead. I don't know what to say. I mean, look, it was quirky. Any of you who ever used FireWire, it worked one day, didn't work the next. That is not the way a studio should run. If you're recording audio, we're musicians. And even if you're sitting behind the desk and you're not playing an instrument, you're still a musician. You're taking part of a song. And that song is part of a business, and the business is making money. So if we're not making money, why are we doing it? You know, you tell me. If you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, God bless you. You're a great philanthropist. We appreciate that. I'm in it for the money. So if you're not, sorry. But so moving right along, I'm not even going to talk about the rest of the FireWire. We'll be glad to share this slide with you post-show if you'd like. And then you can look at all the specs, and we can talk about FireWire another year or another decade. Thunderbolt, good stuff, man. Lightpeak. It is an Intel protocol, as you probably all know. It is not an Apple protocol. It never was an Apple protocol. Jobs liked it and said, oh, I think we could do something with it. And they were going to initialize this thing on the Mac in fiber. And an engineer at Intel said, hey, I think we could do this in copper, and ended up creating the Lightning connector. And, one thing led into another, but it is Intel technology, guys. This is not proprietary anybody other than Intel. So, and guess what? Macs, PCs, Linux, Unix, today, not Unix, I'm skipping out on that for a minute, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself by 3 slides. They're all Intel chips for the most part. I mean, AMD is still an x86 or an x64 architecture. It's still Intel. So the bottom line is, it is a standard, it's real. It was called Lightpeak. We now call it Thunderbolt in the audio industry, but it really is called Lightpeak. And if you look at the speeds there, let's skip right to Thunderbolt 2. 2.5 gigs a second, bytes a second, so double the speed of USB 3. And then, of course, we have Thunderbolt 3. Most of our computers in Slick Audio, and I'll talk about our company later. I don't want to bore you now, because then you'll really fall asleep on me. But Thunderbolt 3 is a 5 gig. Now, one thing you have to understand about Thunderbolt 2, Thunderbolt 2 is really nothing but 2 Thunderbolt 1s married together, bolted together, and you have this bidirectional communication, which you did not have in Thunderbolt 1. It was a almost like a half duplex device. So transmitted, received, transmitted. Now you got 2 channels of 10 going, and hence the 20, which really is, of course, 2.5, as we know. So moving right along, the real fun stuff for me. This is my my area of, I can't say just expertise, but just, to me it's fun. Audio over Ethernet types, there's a million of them. I mentioned CobraNet before, which is actually down in the Layer 2 section. MADI, of course, is kind of its own little animal, and it's ripping fast, 12.5 megabytes per second, my apologies. We're going to talk about Layer 2 and Layer 3. By show of hands, how many of you understand Layer 2 and Layer 3 when it comes to Ethernet? 2 of you. Okay, so the rest of you completely clueless, don't care. Where you I can't ask you where you're at because I really can't hear you that well. So, but that's all right. I'll get there. The next slide is going to explain that a lot deeper. So, Layer 2 basically means I can't route it. It's on a single network, and the stuff works. If you've ever bought a cheap switch, which I'm sure everybody has at some point, gone to Best Buy, Staples, your local Slick Audio store, and picked up a cheap switch, chances are it was a Layer 2 switch. So Layer 3 switch adds an additional set of functionalities to it that I'll explain again next slide. But that would be part and parcel would be an AES-67 protocol, Dante, Audinate's Dante, AVB, audio video bridging. Of course, the AVB and AES-67 are indeed industry standard, open standard protocols. Audinate's Dante is a proprietary protocol, but guess who's leading the pack right now, guys? By over 1,100 units, I believe, companies and counting. I think it's here to stay. And I have no complaints. I mean, I could care less. To me, it's a packet of information. If you told me it was going to be X, Y, Z, I could care. From an IT side, who cares? It's just data. So here we go. This is everything you've wanted to know about networking and your IT classes, and was afraid to ask, or really didn't care, or didn't want to ask. So Layer 1, guys, is the physical cable. You plug it in. I'm not going to bore you to death with stuff, I promise. Layer 2 is what they call link data layer. That is actually, you're familiar with the MAC address? You guys have definitely licensed stuff based on MAC address. So every network card out there has a unique number, and it's called the MAC address. So it's 12 digits. It's 6 slots of 2. So that hardware address is what talks. And, the little device there kind of yells out all the time and just screams and says, hey, I'm this address and I'm here all the time. And the switches and the other devices that are out there can hear all that traffic, and then they do the same thing. So the bigger that network is, that creates a lot of noise going on in network traffic. So you've got all these devices constantly screaming, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So the switching in the hub world, before switches existed, the hubs were basically dumb boxes, and it let all that junk just literally pass through to every other device. When switches were born, they actually created what's called MAC address tables. So the switch got smart and said, hey, I'm going to keep this database, if you will, here, and I'm going to record, like, this MAC address belongs to this port, and this one to this port, et cetera, et cetera. So that way, if I hear somebody yelling that I want to see this MAC address, I'll just send that packet down. And it obviously saved a lot of traffic, and it saved a lot of speed on the network. So all that extra chatter, noise, was isolated per line. There's caveats with that. That only works at the MAC address level. Why do I care? Well, at the MAC address level, it's every and all packet, so all data. So let's talk for a brief moment, before I hit Layer 3, let's talk for a brief moment about what that data could potentially be in audio. So I'm going to pick on Focusrite's RedNet right now, just because it's a Dante piece, and I happen to have it in my own studio. I love it. So in the Dante world, we have 2 really major things that are happening. We've got control protocols. So in other words, timing, there's got to be a clock there, right? And any of you who are aware of Dante, it's got a built-in clocking mechanism. So there's a clock that's running. You know, in the other, I want to say the old world, because I still use a clock in my studio, but nonetheless, you know, you could use a BNC word clock, you know, whatever. So by the definition of Dante, it has its own clocking, as does AVB, as does GoverNet, as does blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Ad nauseum. So you have clocking, you've got the control of the actual packet itself. Where's the information? What am I sending? Then you actually have the audio itself, the data. Now there's a priority that I need to set on that information to get it from point A to point B, because that's not the only traffic that's going on. What about the web traffic? You know, there's web browser. I don't care if you're running Mac OS, guys, or if you're running Windows, or if you're running Linux. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, I use a lot of Red Hat Linux myself, and it doesn't matter. There's still a lot of other chatter and talk going on with various applications, and I'm just going to call it noise. So what do we care about? Audio, right? So I need a way to prioritize. So back in that layer 2 level, to get back to the slide, I couldn't do that. I had no way of prioritizing that data. At the layer 3 level, I do. I can say, hey, the control protocol clocking stuff, that takes #1 priority. It's got to go first. If I don't have control, I don't have audio. So if an audio packet comes through first and there's no control to go with it, where does it go? What is it? How do I assemble it? Has no clue. So therefore, we have to get control through first. #1 priority. Second priority is my audio. Third priority is everything else. So we can tell in a layer 3 environment, a layer 3 switch, we can say, hey, you know, when you see data come through, this gets priority, that gets second priority, everything else, who cares? It'll get there when it gets there. It's good enough. So layer 4 and beyond, I'm definitely not going to put you to sleep, so I'm going to skip. You can ask later. Catch me afterwards if you want to know more about layers 4 through 7. So I kind of explained the whole layer 3 thing, and when we could put priorities. That in the IT world is called QoS, or quality of service. I'm sure you've all heard the term. It is a term that you're going to continue to hear, and is major. It's beyond critical. So, which audio over Ethernet platform protocol do I choose? Let me see. I pick Audinate's Dante just because of its base, its install base today. That doesn't mean that AVB is bad. That doesn't mean that any other, you know, AS67 is bad. Actually, Dante could do 67 over top of itself, so it natively can do that. It's, you know, this is the beta VHS war, guys. You know, you got to go with the majority rules, and I mean, it is what it is. So who cares? All I care about at the end of the day is that song, right? Because that's what's making me the money. So what's being used and how it's, don't care. Make me money. You're a tool. Make me money. Somebody called me a tool once. I threw him out. Anywho, skipping right along here. So, you know, one has to question, is this IT or audio? I mean, everything we just talked about so far is core information technology. It's core IT. And you know, we had 2 hands up that understood the layer 3 thing, but I mean, you all knew what I was talking about when I was saying QoS and all that stuff, and I saw everybody nodding their head, okay. It was either that or you were getting ready to fall asleep. So one of the two, but nonetheless, you understood what I meant. So you already know some IT, and you didn't even probably put the 2 and 2 together. And if you did, God bless you. And if you didn't, God bless you. So, you know, don't be afraid of the IT side. It's nothing to be afraid of. Learn what you need to know. Don't be afraid to hire IT people to solve a problem. Not doing so, especially in a larger project, is going to get you in deep trouble. Fired, company belly up, bankrupt. I think it all equates to the same thing. So, you know, it's okay. I mean, those people don't bite. I know they're a little screwed up, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. Look at me. So the last thing that I want to say about the switches, and then I'm going to get out of this whole switch thing and move to a slightly different topic. But QoS is very important. But cheap switches every switch has an engine, a processor, just no different than a computer. It is a computer, guys. It's running basically a hybrid Linux operating system, whether it's Cisco, Dell, take your pick. Doesn't really matter. So the point being is those devices really are computers in themselves, and they're managing two databases. Remember that layer 2 database we talked about? They also have a layer 3 database, which is the IP address. And there's actually a layer 4 database that actually is the protocol itself. So, again, we have to understand how to route those packets, where to route the packets, when to route the packets, blah, blah, blah. So the faster that engine is, faster the computer is, faster, you get things done, right? Well, the faster the backplane of the switch is, the faster it processes data and moves it on. So if I personally had a choice as an IT guy at 34 and a half years, having done literally multi-million dollar backbone, for Blue Cross of Northeast PA, I did their entire data center, their entire disaster recovery center, Mohegan Sun's data center. I could go on and on. So having built data centers where the switching alone was anywhere from $10 to $100 million, let alone the petaflops of processing power, and petabytes of data that we moved along with it. When I look at this stuff, I'm like, gigabit? This is just funny to me. I did this shit, sorry, am I allowed to say that? I did this stuff 20 years ago. I mean, so this is like, to see it coming alive now, and everybody's going, gigabit. I'm like, I'm working in 40, 80. I mean, we're doing stuff just on a whole different level, with fiber and optics and duplexing and redundant fiber and but not that you really care about the IT world. But wait a minute. Oh, that's right. They're one and the same. Okay, so wouldn't it be a natural marriage to know that at some point you're going to see those kind of speeds and that tech hit your industry? You're gonna. The question is when. I don't know when. You tell me. It's as good as a guess. I'm in the bloody industry. I make machines, and I still don't know. So hands up in the air. We don't care. Move along. We have to work with what we have to work with. So now, all that in mind, back to that choice of the switch, the cheap switch, that has QoS versus the good switch that has QoS. Spend the extra money and get the good switch, because a good switch, I could turn QoS off, and it will outperform the cheap switch with QoS on, because it's got a faster backplane. It can switch packets faster, because that cheap switch is only going to go so fast, it's going to hit a wall, it's done, over, good night. I don't care what you do to it. You could put a hex on it, you could take it down in the middle of Times Square and run over it with a truck 65 times, because that's about all it'll be worth. Get a good switch. Dell makes a great switch. They're what used to be the Power Connect line, whatever they're calling Dell Networking now, I don't know. HP ProCurves, decent switch. Cisco makes a decent switch, and I'm not talking about the little ones you buy at Best Buy. I'm talking about real Cisco switches. You will spend $500, $600, $700, $800+ for one of those switches. It will be worth every nickel you put into it. Trust me. So again, from the IT side, having done this, it is what it is. I'm going to move right along because I don't want to burn every bit of time on the boring IT crap. But wait a minute, the whole thing is IT. Well, whatever. So Thunderbolt, that's IT. We just talked about that before. I mean, it was LightPeak. I mean, it was designed, guys, for SAN connectivity. You guys know what SANs are? SAN? Storage Area Network. So if you've ever seen pictures of data centers, like for Google or whoever, and you see those gigantic racks of all kinds of lights, they're nothing but hard drives. That's a storage area network. It's a SAN. So they're ridiculously expensive, about $1.5 million fully loaded, plus, depending on what kind of drives you put in it. And they're ridiculously fast. So to have that much data, think about connecting, literally 250 hard drives up to your computer, Mac PC. How would you do it? How would you possibly get all the throughput and the performance out of each disk on there? Difficult, right? I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling when you start thinking about the speeds. So if that's the case, you know, I need a way to make that happen. So there were various pieces put into place and technologies, which I'm definitely not going to get into now, even though we sell them. I don't want to get into it now. You know, we needed a faster, better way to be able to get that data across. So this Thunderbolt technology, LightPeak, was actually created for that reason. That was its creation reason. So, and then it morphed out of the SAN technology, which Fibre Channel still kind of owns. You know, and it turned into this. And I'm not arguing because, man, I'll tell you, it rocks. You know, we use it in our PCs. All but 2 of our machines support Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 2. And my God, the performance that we've had out of them, just phenomenal. So I am a big fan. Very, very, very good technology, solid. I'll talk more at the end. If I have enough, I'll give you a couple of stories, real-world stories that we had using Thunderbolt and also in Dante RedNet-based stuff. USB, it's an IT piece. It's, you know, mice, printers, I don't care. It was IT long before it was an interface. Computers that you're running the stuff on, it was IT long before you used it for audio. So it's IT. The slide that creates the wars. I'm waiting for laughs. I'm waiting for stuff to be thrown at me at this point. So, as I put in my slide, notice I didn't call it Mac versus PC. I called it Windows versus Mac OS because the machines are the same. It's the same bloody motherboards, guys. I don't care what you say. I'll prove it. I'm an electrical engineer. So, you know, if you have the same motherboard and you have the same I/O and you have the same cards, we're down to an OS thing, right? Okay. So, Mac OS 10, as you know, is a BSD Unix derivative. And Windows is kind of its own animal that's grown up since 89, 88. I don't remember when version 1 came out. Who cares? Unix has been around since the late 50s. It's nothing new. I cut my teeth on Unix. I was a big IRIX guy, SGI's IRIX, HPUX. Sun, when Sun was born, the Galaxy was formed. Now Solaris, or we used to call it Slolaris because it was a real pain in the ass to work with. It was just an interesting time back then. So we're talking pre-PC, pre-Mac. So all of a sudden, you know, Mac OS comes out, and then Windows comes out, and all of a sudden, 20 years later, we have this war, and everybody thinks that, oh my God, you know, the Mac guys are looking at the Windows guys, go, that sucks, and the Windows guys are looking at the Mac guys, going, you're running what? Guys, it's just an operating system. How long are you in your operating system when you're doing a session? Number? 20 seconds? 30 seconds? A minute? Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. 2 minutes. 2 minutes of your day out of an 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour session is spent in your operating system. The rest of it's spent in the bloody DAW. Who cares what OS is underneath as long as it runs that entire session and makes you money, right? Who cares? So this world, this planet, needs to get off this whole Windows Mac BS, because that's all it is. It's nonsense. You're using the same hardware. The difference is when you call Apple, they will definitely, great support, and they will help you with your machine, even though your Mac Pro's now, what, how old? 8 years? Or, you know, you can call, and they have no idea about audio, or you can call a company like ours, Slick Audio, and we'll not only help you with the machine, but we also understand your audio problems. We can help you with both. And by the way, we can do up to 5 years on our machine of warranty. So if you want real help from professionals, come to us. And there's other companies like us, but they suck, and we're good. So I'm kidding, guys. Come on. Give me a break. I need a little laughter. It's an afternoon. I need another cup of coffee. I've only had 4. So, you know, the bottom line is, you know, we have these machines to get a job done. And that is, at the end of the day, all that matters. We need to make some money. So now that we've learned the OS is irrelevant, notice I put that in there. I didn't even ask your permission. I just did it. damn Slick, what the hell's he doing to us? So, you know, plugins. What is a plugin? It's a computer program. What's a VST? You know, an AX. I mean, they're nothing but computer programs to simulate something. You know, a convolution reverb. You know, a plate reverb. Who cares? A guitar simulator. I mean, I've used it all. I'm a bloody geek with that stuff. You can't have enough plugins. I mean, you know, you get like 17,000 plugins, and all of a sudden, oh my God, that one's better. You know, and you buy 17,001. You know, and you'll never use it, but that's okay. You have it. It's definitely me. I mean, I've got more freaking plugins than you know. I mean, Waves got rich on me. So I don't know if anybody's here from Waves, but you guys got rich on me. I own Mercury. I've used 3 plugins in it. I've owned it for 2 years. I've used 3 plugins. Well, I guess I should have thought about that a little bit, but the MIT guys, I'm telling you, we don't think. So, virtual instruments. Here's another one. It is a computer program to emulate a keyboard or whatever. So, let's just say an instrument. Yeah, they're the same. It's a computer program. So, knowing that they're both computer programs, that means we're back to an IT issue again. I've got CPU to deal with, and I've got memory to deal with. So what do I do with all this stuff? So plugins and virtual instruments will consume memory. Tons of it, if allowed, especially VIs. When you're buying a machine, put as much memory in as you can afford to put in it, period. Just a rule of thumb. Why am I saying that? Well, again, by the nature of what these programs are, every time you load a program, it goes into memory. When you run out of memory, it writes it down to hard disk. So if you have that, what's called paging going on, which, by the way, happens in both operating systems, guys. So you run out. There's this thing that happens where it takes a chunk of memory, and it's not just your program, by the way. It's literally a mathematical calculated chunk based on the number. It's an algorithm based on the total RAM, based on the page file that your system's set for, divided by 0.735. Don't ask me where in the hell they came up with that number, but they did. So that is the chunk that is removed. I'm sure there is a legitimate reason, or whatever. So that is a chunk of memory that's literally moved out of memory, dropped on the hard disk, and then that frees up that amount of space for your additional programs to start loading. Virtual instruments, whatever. What if it's half of a VI? Well, that's good. So now I'm trying to play this keyboard part, right? And all of a sudden I go to do my nice, beautiful, long, 7th, 9th, diminished, whatever, run, and all of a sudden it just boom, stops. Click, pop, bang, hiss, yells at me, screams at me. Well, that's probably your computer paging that chunk of memory that it put on disk seconds ago back into memory again and moving the first piece out, which guess what means? The next time you go down the keyboard, it's going to do the same bloody thing again to you. Put as much memory in the machine as you can. So it's getting cheaper. And that, guys, it fluctuates by the day. I mean, I can't say, our prices have to change so frequently, unfortunately, because of the markets. We try to use as much American componentry as we possibly can. Crucial Memory is all we use. They're the only American memory company. There's only 3 in the world, by the way, that make memory. So I don't care what brand you're buying or think you know about. There's 3 companies that manufacture it in the world, and one just burned down in December in Korea. So that's 2. So you're either buying Crucial or you're buying the other guys, Samsung. So that's it. There's nobody else. If you think there is, you're joking. You're laughing. I'm laughing at you. Trust me, not with you, at you. So there's only 2. So I don't care who you use. I told you you get mad at me by the end of this thing. So, anywho, let's talk about CPU now and cores. So I have to flip the thing because this is just like, I had to put the joke in there, the pun. I'm a Guinness guy, but I had to put cores in there. I don't know. I like Guinness. Can you tell? Anyway, one of the biggest questions that we are asked to design machines for people, what should I do? Should I put more cores in the machine or should I spend my money on memory? Well, what are you doing with the machine? If you're doing mastering, the heck with the cores. Put memory in the machine and get the fastest box you can. if you're doing a lot of virtual instruments, keyboard players, in particular. I mean, I've got to pick on the keyboard players. I'm one too. I'm also a guitarist. Those things are hogs, and they use one core at a time. That's it. So you'd be better off if you had an 8 million core system and it ran at a half a gigahertz. Well, guess what? You're going to use one of those cores at a half a gigahertz, and that's the power you got for your VI. Whereas maybe a 4-core processor, the 7700 i7, running at 4.2 gig, probably be the ideal fit for you. It's going to react faster, it's going to do better. Now, should you put more memory into that? Absolutely. Because you just saved an absolute boatload of money buying a lot less cores, and that money now can be put into RAM. Now you don't have a paging problem. You just solved the mystery of, hey, what do I do? It's really not hard. Now, in the plug-in world, plug-ins and your DAW, again, Pro Tools, Cubase, Nuendo, Studio One, doesn't matter. That will carve up between all the cores and attempt to balance out. Now, I'm assuming that you've frozen your VIs at this point. So let's make that, clear. You don't have any VIs or you've frozen them. Frozen them meaning you've gotten them out of memory. So then the number of cores suddenly becomes a different animal. Then I would say, yeah, definitely pump up the volume. Let's get some bigger boxes in here. Our biggest machine is 48 cores. Think that's enough? We thought about adding more, but, we couldn't put, we tried to put a boat anchor in with it, but it wouldn't fit. But no, it's 24 cores, and then hyper-threaded in Windows. We get this lovely thing called hyper-threading, and it actually acts as 48 cores. So it's brutal. We actually have one box that we bench tested with that, and you don't want to know how many tracks. We were up to 500, and it didn't even blink. So we just stopped and we shut it down and sold the box. We were like, okay, if we can do 500 tracks, I think it'll work for just about anybody. Because if you need 500 tracks to do a song, I would fire somebody, probably. At least if I owned the studio, or if I was managing the band, either one. Somebody's getting canned. So, anywho, so that leaves the last point here of i7, well, almost the last point. I got to bore you a little bit more yet. i7's, i5, i7 versus Xeon. We sell both, and why would I want to use one over the other? Guys, Xeons are the workhorse of the Intel family. They were meant to be in servers and CAD workstations. They are meant to run 24/7 and never be turned off, ever. They're meant to be run at 100% CPU utilization 24/7, period. That's their shtick. It's their thing, longevity. They're expensive. The cool part about it is understanding that they can't be overclocked as much as an i7 can, but with overclocking a CPU comes inherent risk. Heat. Heat's a computer's worst enemy. So if you can't dissipate the heat properly, guess what? You just created the best freaking easy bake oven that the world has ever had. And I guarantee it'll be a great fireworks show along with it. Have you ever seen one go that's overheated? Oh, it's fun. Yeah, they're a riot as they burn your frickin' house to the ground. So enough about that, because I'm already getting dangerously low on time. So we did talk about the CPU and the number of cores. We went through that whole thing. So understanding that balance, of VIs versus plugins, versus number of tracks. If you're doing a lot of plugins, number of tracks, more cores the better. Still shove as much memory in as you can afford to do. So again, a balancing act. And in the VI world, definitely, if you're really strong on the VIs, back off in the number of cores, go for speed. And there is a balance actually. There's a 12-core Xeon that's out that it's my favorite. The 87W. That thing is just mean. It's 3.6 gig, which we overclocked to 3.8. And so if you run our 5000 series, then that's where the 48 core thing comes in. It's 24 cores times 2. It's just brutal, absolute brutal machine. But anyway, real quick, hard disk, SSD versus, SSD's quiet. It's a beautiful thing. It's quiet. Outside of that, does it have any serious advantage? Hell no. You're never going to use it in audio. You're not writing that much data or reading that much data to create a performance impact on a standard 7200 RPM drive. Would I do it on a 54? Hell no. But a 72 is sufficient. So, as far as which one to use for your data, in my studio, and I'm running a couple hundred tracks at a clip, just depending on what I'm doing. Yes, I'm the lazy guy. I tried to fire myself. It didn't work. So, I use all SATA 7200 RPM for my data stuff. Look, it's cheap disk, and if you're doing a lot of tracks, a lot of sessions, it's cheap disk. Now for the OS, I use SSD. In our fanless machine, we use all SSD just for the noise. We want zero noise, so we have a fanless machine. It's got 2 SSDs in it. Pretty wicked little thing. You shove it in the middle of a room while you're tracking, and I don't care what mic you've got on, you'll never hear it. It's just dead quiet. Cool stuff. RAID, bug spray. Gotta love it. RAID's a beautiful thing. If zero downtime is mission critical to you, then you need to do RAID on your machine, at least at an operating system level. You could swap out a data drive if you have to. Of course, you're going to lose your session. So you probably want to do RAID across the board on everything. But that's, if zero downtime's the issue, RAID's the way to go. Redundant array of inexpensive disks. I don't want to bore you with more IT crap, but guess what? It's more IT crap. I run RAID in my machines just because I don't want to load another machine. They take too long. It's like 2 days worth of solid. Feed the disk. It is what it is. So, we also have discrete RAID cards that would be similar to what's in a server. And those things are pretty wicked because that offloads all the I/O to this card. So think of it as a DSP for hard drives. And so that now you're offloading, the CPU has got a lot of time to wave at you and go, hi, I need more, throw more at me. And it's good stuff. So again, running short of time, keep going. The last and the most major component in the machine is the motherboard. And we talked before, that's really where the changes happen and the rubber meets the road. Your Apple motherboards are well thought out, they're well designed, they're manufactured in China and Taiwan. There's other motherboards out there by other companies, and they're incredible, and they're manufactured in China and Taiwan too, and the same plant. So it's, but choosing that right board and then setting its BIOS, basic input-output system, another IT term, properly, and the operating system properly, whether it's Mac OS or it's Windows, after you've tweaked it out, you're going to have a system that's going to run for a long time, and it's going to do its job. It will get tired. It's a computer. It's an electromechanical device. It will fail at some point. So you're not going to have a computer for 15 years. If you have, you probably haven't recorded anything in your life, and you've sat and looked at it on the shelf. But if you're using it professionally, 5 years is it. You're never going to see more than that. And I'm not saying you won't. I mean, this is like buying a car, guys. Go on. You buy 10 cars, right? And they're all identical in the showroom. You're like, that one's cool. I like the red one. And you buy these cars, and one of them's going to be the lemon. It's going to fall apart in 5 minutes. The other one's going to last absolutely forever, and everything else is kind of somewhere in between. It's an electric mechanical device. It is what it is. So just have to understand. Overclocking the machine, you're just shortening the life of the machine. Nothing more. So reducing latency is probably the piece that we talked about a lot of stuff, and it's really a combination of everything. But there's a piece in here that really has to be hammered home. And I want you to look about the middle of the slide. I'll just come over here and kind of point. Little known fact. You can't hear below 10 milliseconds of latency. Because if you think you can, don't argue with me. Go to see your doctor, or audiologist in particular, and you can argue with them all day. Because they're telling you that physically, physiologically, it is impossible. You can't hear it. Test it. Guitar players out there, raise your hand. Cool. Nice. When your cabinet's 10 feet away from you, you just experienced 10 milliseconds of latency. Did you hear it? Hell no. Come on. Tell me you did, I'd just laugh at you. I really would. So that's the point I'm trying to make. There's this perception out there that is not reality, that people think, oh my God, I need zero latency. There's no such thing as zero latency. Life isn't zero latency. Me getting this data stream to you is not zero latency. If we took all this crap off and I was yelling at you, it would be 10 milliseconds or better depending on the distance of the room. So give me a break. Dante, audio array for Ethernet, USB 3, 3.1 when it comes out, Thunderbolt are all sufficient to do your job. What do you need and what kind of budget do you have? So you got to start thinking about this in a different manner, in a cost-effective manner to run your business. It is a business. If you're doing it for fun, that's cool. Do you want to blow money out the window, or would you like to have enough money left over to buy a Corvette? I did. Okay, so, and it is a red one, by the way. Cool. So, you know, that's the whole point I'm trying to make with this whole slide, is the technology is giving us tools to really do something cool. You know, I love audio over Ethernet in particular because of the fact that I can record my C3 grand piano in my living room, because that's where I like it. I have this beautiful marble tile floor, you know, in that little corner, because I couldn't afford to do the whole room, you know, but it just creates this nice echo, and I want it recorded there. I didn't want it down in the studio. So with that, I mean, our whole house is literally wired in Ethernet. So all I do is just take one of the pre's, like RedNet 4, plug it into the wall upstairs, go downstairs, hit my iPhone, track, done. Done. I'm not running cables up the steps. My wife would kill me. She's killing me now. You should see the freaking living room. It's hysterical. Anyway, so latency is really such a natural thing. Can you guys still hear me okay? Okay, good. Yeah, I had something weird went by. So, you know, choose your I/O wisely. Thunderbolt's a great, absolute great, phenomenal piece. You know, there's Focusrite, there's, you know, Mo2, the new Quantum box from Presonus, killer machine. We're going to be doing a lot of work with them on that particular device. I can't wait for that. And it's, you know, audio over Ethernet is a screamer. So you'll get plenty of horsepower for what you need to do. USB 3 is probably more than enough for each of you and what you're trying to do with your projects. It's the question is how you're going to scale it and how you're going to move it. Talk to us. You know, we'll talk about buffer size. If any of you guys want to dial this in, I'm down to a couple minutes left here. So if you want a copy of this slide, we'll be glad to share it with you. So don't, I see a gentleman over here taking pictures. I gotta get a picture now, oh my God. So no, if you want a copy, come on over, we'll get you a copy. Anywho, I will conclude at that. And if there's any questions, I'm going to, well, I'm there or there, I don't know, maybe closer. If there was beer there, I'd go that side. So I guess I'll go to that side. So I'll be over there if you want to come talk to me afterwards, and we can discuss anything, specific issues, or we can actually go back to our booth, 527. That's right. I can see it from here. Chris is back there now. Throw the water at him. It'd be cool. But, so yeah, come back and talk to us. And we'd love to help you out and talk more. Thank you so much.